What's up, everybody?
Hey.
Welcome back to Music Maniacs with Side After Dark. We're Side After Dark, your new favorite band. And we are talking about a legend today.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about someone who's an innovator.
Uh-huh. A guitarinator.
A guitarinator. We're talking about somebody who has been an influence on pretty much every guitarist that's ever come after this particular person.
Definitely.
We're talking about someone that has 8 Grammy Awards.
8.
Someone that has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice.
Twice.
As a member of the Yardbirds.
And
by himself.
Uh-huh.
All right? So he doesn't need those other people. He can do them all by himself, okay?
Take that, Jimmy.
Take that, Eric. So if you guys didn't know by now, we are talking about the late, great Jeff Beck.
We are.
Shout out to Jeff. We had a completely different episode planned.
We did.
But unfortunately, when we heard of his passing, we decided we had to do this on him. We had to do what we could do best to honor him and his legacy. It would feel weird to not have done a Jeff Beck podcast right now.
Yeah.
You know?
We could have stayed silent, but that would have been wrong.
That would have been wrong.
No comment.
If you guys are new to the channel, basically, we're a band. We make music. We love music. We love talking about music. And this whole podcast kind of thing, it's a conversation. It's a conversation between friends about music.
Definitely.
And if you're watching this, you're also our friend. So we want you to be involved in the convo. We want you to leave comments, say what you think, say if you agree with what we were saying, if you disagree, what your perspective is. We want to hear it, So definitely any feedback is appreciated.
Absolutely.
And without any further ado,
let's talk about Jeff Beck.
all right, so we'll talk more obviously about how innovative he is as a guitar, his guitar style, as we go through.
Yeah.
But we should definitely just start at the beginning.
Yeah, let's get to the body, the neck, and the head of Jeff Beck.
Not the strings yet.
Not the fret either.
We'll save that for later.
Don't
you fret. All right, so Jeffrey Arnold Beck
was
born in a former Roman town called Londinium. May be better known to you guys as London.
Yes.
Yes.
And there's a town called Wallington in South London, which, if you don't know about London in the South, they're doing pretty well.
Is that?
I saw pictures.
Oh.
I imagined myself there. That's how nice the lawns and stuff. And I haven't really done that since like 3rd grade. Looking in a book and like, ooh, I'd like to live there.
Yeah.
It's looking pretty nice.
But also, in the mid-40s, lots of desolate buildings and destroyed things in London. So probably wasn't as nice then when he was born.
Yeah, thanks to some people, it wasn't looking too good. Those people, like, you know who you are.
There's certain people.
You know who you are.
You know who you are or who they were? I hope it's not who you are.
I was going to say were, but I'm like, that's not you. We don't blame you. Don't worry about it. We blame them, okay? We'll take it all up in heaven or hell.
Yeah. Well, I think we know which one. Anyway, so Jeff Beck was born in London, and from a really early age, he was really into the electric guitar, specifically the electric guitar.
Yes, because he heard Les Paul play How High the Moon.
Yes.
And this is crazy because I'm glad he got to hear it on the radio, because if he actually probably saw it, he probably would have quit before he started.
Just like, I can't do that.
Exactly. Les Paul's like a robot alien guitar player.
Yeah.
Tell me he's a human in the comments and I'll disagree.
Yeah, so he was like 8 years old, something like that. He was in the car with his mom, I believe.
Yeah.
And then he heard Les Paul come on the radio, and he was just kind of like, said to his mom, like, what is this? Like, what is this instrument? I don't know. I've never heard something like, oh, that's an electric guitar. And apparently she was kind of like dismissive of it.
Yeah.
She's kind of like, oh, it's just a bunch of, tricks and gadgets and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And Jeff was kind of like, well, I like it.
Yeah.
So
I definitely think that's something you have to be like inclined or musically inclined and already blessed with the ear and the spirit for the music.
Yeah.
Because that's a sound easily somebody who doesn't really care about the guitar can be like dismissive about. But if you're like really into it, you're hearing the different things that the guitarist is doing.
Yeah,
and you know that it's not necessarily simple or just gimmicky.
I really like that you said that, because that can also be something that could be said about Jeff's playing. Mm-hmm. As again, we'll talk about that more as we go on. Yeah. So stick around. Uh-huh. But it's funny that him hearing Les Paul would inspire him to be a guitar player, because it's not like Les Paul had any influence on guitar at all. It's not like he was important in guitar.
It's the first time I heard his name when I started researching.
Yeah, it's definitely not on the wall behind me.
Not at all. Not at all. You won't ever see me playing one.
Definitely not. For those of you new to the channel, we're big fans of sarcasm here, and Les Paul, kind of a big deal when it comes to electric guitar. If you don't know much about guitar, you might think, Les Paul, I feel like I've heard of that. Isn't that like some kind of model of guitar made by Gibson?
Yep. And he lived to like 100, which is, okay, human, I think not. No.
And I'll just say that the fact that the Gibson Les Paul is named after him is not a coincidence. And I'll just leave it at that. So anyway, at the age of 8, Jeff Beck is like, I love this. I love this electric guitar. I got to get into this. Apparently, they couldn't really afford to buy him a new one at the time.
No.
So he did like everything that he could. He borrowed guitars. He tried to make a guitar out of like cigar boxes and shit.
He tried to make one where he painted the fretboards on. Must have sounded real good.
Fretless guitar?
Yeah, and he used
Another innovation.
He used the fence post as the neck of the guitar.
Really?
Yes, he did.
Hey, when you love something, nothing's going to stop it. Nothing's going to stop you.
Of course, he said it sounded horrible.
I mean, I feel like it would sound great. Sounds like a good time. But yeah, once he kind of sunk his teeth in, he really never let go to guitar like the rest of his life.
Yes.
And he obviously was in London, where there was a lot of things going on musically in London in the 60s. Now we're talking about like the early 60s.
Yeah.
And he was going around, he was getting involved with sessions, he was playing with other people, and his sister introduced him to another guitarist in the area.
Yes.
By the name of Jimmy Page.
Yes, his sister, I'm going to say you were dating Jimmy. And if you were not, I'm going to say you missed the boat on that one, girl. All right, anyway.
That's so funny, because in my head, when I read that she introduced him to Jimmy, I was like, I wonder how they knew each other.
Well, Jimmy's up there playing guitar looking all cute.
Jimmy cast a spell on Jeff's sister. But anyway, Jimmy will obviously be coming up more in the story as well.
Yeah.
But for now, we're still talking about just Jeff and his kind of career progression. So he appeared on a few recordings with some other bands at the time.
Yes.
Before he really found his home.
Yeah, the Savages. There was some interesting names. Some
Fritz
things of
and the Starts.
Yeah.
All kinds of things like that. And so he was kind of bouncing around, doing different studio sessions, appearing on different people's records until he joined a band called the Yardbirds.
Yes.
But we got to go back a little bit here also.
Yeah. And Jeff's style was already growing at this point, because he had loved like not only Les Paul, but like Gene Vincent. I can see how Gene Vincent was a super influence on Jeff's image too. Jeff didn't really sing. I heard he had really good vocals, but he didn't really sing. But Gene Vincent, B.B. King, like a lot of those bluesy type of, rockabilly styles, he was into that. So he was really growing, and his name was getting to be known, so there he goes flapping along, and then he swoops down into a nest called the Yardbirds.
The Yardbirds. Right. I was like, wait, where are you going with that? Got it. Okay. But we'll talk about the Yardbirds for a second, because it's really funny. The Yardbirds are a legendary band, and obviously we weren't around at the time they were putting out music.
No.
But to me, the Yardbirds are most famous, not even for their music itself, but who was in the band.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So 3 of the most legendary guitarists that have ever lived were in that band.
Absolutely.
Number 1, obviously, we're talking about Jeff Beck here.
Yes.
So that's obvious.
Yeah.
Then we're talking about Jimmy Page.
Yes.
And then there was this other guy.
This other guitarist.
I can't remember him.
His name is Eric Clapton, but I think he's known as...
Sure?
Yeah, I think he's known as the Clap. I think that's his name.
Right. The Yardbirds had the Clap, and they had to get rid of it. Okay, so here's the thing about Eric Clapton, guys. For y'all that don't know, we joke about this all the time. We don't not like Eric Clapton.
Yeah, we actually love some of his songs. I can say that.
We love some of his songs, but we don't really like talking about him on the podcast or really anything that we do, because we both agree on this separately. We didn't like come up to this conclusion together.
Right.
We think he's crazily overrated.
Yeah.
He's not a bad guitarist. He's a lot better than a lot of guitarists.
At all.
But when you're talking about people like Jeff Beck,
yeah,
Jimmy Page, Rory Gallagher, Jimi Hendrix,
exactly.
I don't think Clapton is in that category.
I don't think he's in that category. I used to actually make jokes that Richie Blackmore's solo on Smoke on the Water was Eric Clapton's whole career in a nutshell.
Yeah, so that's what we feel about Eric Clapton. Tell us how you feel. Tell us if we're dumb. I want to hear about it.
I know a lot of you will. I know we're going to upset a lot of you. So we're sorry. But he's not, let me just put it like this. He's not our top 3.
Yes, that's definitely true.
And that's it. He may be in the top 20 though.
Maybe.
Like, you know, but not top 3.
Anyway, back to the Yardbirds. Mm-hmm. What happened was Eric was the original guitarist.
Yes.
And he was kind of a blues purist.
Yes, that's what they're saying. Some band members say he was very uptight, okay, and too stiff.
Yes. So he wanted the sound to be a very specific way.
Yeah.
And the Yardbirds didn't necessarily want that. They wanted to expand a little bit.
Yeah.
So Eric was like, okay, well, you guys have fun with that.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah. Even when the Yardbirds were making music and they were hitting on the charts and stuff, Eric was still like, oh my God, like, thank God I left. That is way too gimmicky for me. Like, let's go to the blues. So, yeah.
So Eric suggested somebody that he knew by the name of Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
And Jimmy had a very cushy job as a session player at the time.
I'm busy right now, so I can't really do it.
He was getting paid to play in other people's records. He didn't have to be on the road all the time. He was making money. It was a pretty good gig for him.
Yeah.
So he's like, hey, I'm kind of busy with this session work that I'm doing, but
I do know a chap that I was friends with.
By the name
I can do a
Jeffrey.
good Jimmy.
You want to do it? Okay.
His name is Jeff Beck. You might like him. He plays pretty groovy, and I think he's quite vibey.
Oh, okay. We'll try him out. So the Yardbirds bring Jeff Beck in. And from the beginning, he was clearly always trying to innovate.
Yeah.
Like, he was one of the first uses of like a fuzz pedal was one of the first songs that he did with the Yardbirds.
Yeah.
Sorry, Yardboards?
New group coming out 2023.
That's right. Be on the lookout. Yeah, like he was always trying to push, fuzz, weird like feedback, like delay. Like he was really trying to push what the guitar was at the time.
Yeah.
And especially, we're talking about the 60s, like, and in London, everybody was all about trying to push the envelope and trying to do different things.
Yeah, it was London was definitely the creative central for rock and roll at this time.
Yes. And he's in there.
But we started it here in America.
That's right. Don't forget it. And they'll all tell you that, too. Shout out to B.B. King. But yeah, so he's trying all these different things and really pushing the sound with the Yardbirds, and they're having a lot of success. I believe the Yardbirds' most successful period was when Jeff was in the band.
Yes, everybody seems to agree that was their heyday. And listening to the music, I would agree too.
Yeah.
Because I can still listen to that music, even though it's kind of quote unquote passe, I can still jam out or vibe to their music.
Yes, definitely. And the thing that's really interesting is they gave him a lot of room to do this experimentation.
Yeah.
But for him, it still wasn't enough. Like, he really was like, I'm trying to push the boundaries as much as I can in any way, and I'm not trying to necessarily be confined to a band.
Yeah.
So even though he was still able to push the envelope while he was in the Yardbirds, his time in the Yardbirds was still relatively short. I think it was like 20 months, so a year and a half.
Less than 2 years. And somebody had quite a temper when he couldn't get his way, Jeff. Some people used to jam their guitars into Marshall amps, and there were only like 20 Marshall amps in America
the world.
at that time. And there goes Jeff with his South London attitude, jamming things and just getting them replaced.
That's right.
And Yardbirds said, "No, we've had enough of this. You're fired."
Well, so it's interesting because then after this, Jeff suggested Jimmy back in the band, but for a brief time they were both in the band.
Yes,
which is insane
to
hear. It doesn't sound that crazy at the time because Jimmy hadn't done what he did.
Yeah,
and Jeff hadn't done everything that he was gonna do. But if you're hearing about this now, you're like, wait, so you had a band? It was a dual lead guitar lineup with Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page. That sounds like it's made up.
It does. It really does. And then like kind of while or as he's kind of leaving the Yardbirds, he makes another single, and he forms like a kind of super group where he had Jimmy playing guitar, and then he had Keith Moon on the drums, and he had John Paul Jones on bass, and he had Nicky Hopkins on the piano.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
I know. That was a single Beck's Bolero,
Yeah.
which became one of his favorites that he still played in concert like his entire life. Like, people love that song. But before even that, everybody knew that he was kind of the man.
Yeah.
And there was a few bands that wanted him to join
Yes.
after he left the Yardbirds.
Some no-name bands, but
So small bands that wouldn't really go on to do much, you know.
I don't think they stood the test of time, but we'll mention
No,
them.
definitely not. So like this band called like the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
I don't know if they really ended
They
up doing
rolled
anything.
right off the charts. I haven't heard from them.
They rolled right away from all the music fans. This other band, like, they were having some troubles with their leader. He was going a little off the deep end. This band called Pink Floyd.
Yeah, I don't even know who they are.
Apparently, they wanted him to join, but nobody had the balls to ask him, which is kind of funny.
Which is good, yeah, because at that time and at the times after, people, mainly Jeff Beck, would agree he was the best guitarist at the time. He said that many times.
Well, that's hilarious. But also, I think it worked out in the end because I think him not being in those bands allowed him to do what he wanted to do. And then also, if let's say Jeff Beck did join Pink Floyd, it would be a lot different. And we wouldn't get the Floyd music that we love so much now. So I think it all worked out, good for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to add a little bit to this because they'll kind of add, at the time, Jeff had another hobby, which was working on cars.
Yes.
And I feel that the sound, working on cars, on the engines and all that stuff kind of did affect his guitar playing style and his innovation.
Right.
So, yeah, let's head back to the topic.
Yeah. And then still speaking about guitar innovation, so it's really interesting how it went, like, kind of his progression. Like we were saying earlier, he was always trying to, mess around with like sound effects, and he's detuning strings, and he's doing these echoes and reverb effects and blah, blah, blah. And then as he goes on, he kind of abandoned the effects kind of sound a little bit.
Yeah.
And, people debate what the reason was for that. But one of the reasons that I heard is that he had seen this guy, American guy, who had came over to London by the name of Jimi Hendrix. And he was doing shit that nobody else had ever thought of doing or had ever been able to pull off.
Yeah.
And this was a quote that I heard, is that Jeff Beck saw Jimmy and was like, well, I used to be a guitarist. I thought I was a guitarist.
That's hilarious.
So
that's why I had the Redcoats had to band together and take him out.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, after Jeff saw that and what was happening, he was like, okay, well, I need to do something else because this is being done better than I can do it.
Yeah.
He's like, I still am trying to innovate, but I think this bus or this lane that I've been in, I've done enough. It's time to switch lanes a little bit.
Yeah, that's the humility of greatness that I kind of love. He could have easily been like, I'm coming for you, Hendrix.
Yeah, I don't think that would have worked out.
No,
well.
I don't think so.
Not that, I'm not going to say who is better or worse, but it's like clearly they're doing different things. It's like, why would you compete with somebody when you could be doing your own thing? Yeah,
and I don't know how Jeff works as a lick my guitar and hump the floor kind of guy, for the wild psychedelia that Jimi Hendrix brought to the game. I don't think once Jimmy starts humping that guitar, Jeff, it's time to pack it up.
Jeff loves his guitars too much to set them on fire, so he decided not to compete with Jimmy. But so after this, so again, he's working on, he's doing session works, like we were saying, like Beck's Bolero. And side note on that, so what ended up happening with the Yardbirds? After Jeff left, Jimmy was the sole guitarist, so the band kind of fell apart.
Yeah, it's all in the name. I don't think that name could have lasted too long.
I don't think, the name is just not good enough,
Yeah.
So he brought on some people that used to play with Jeff, most notably John Paul Jones on bass, and this guy, John Bonham, and a singer named Robert Plant, to fill out the rest of the Yardbirds, and they were the new Yardbirds, until they eventually decided this name's kind of lame, so we're going to change our name to Led Zeppelin.
Yes.
So things worked out pretty well for them.
Check out our link to our Led Zeppelin podcast.
Oh yeah, check it out. That was our first episode we did. Shout out to Led Zeppelin. So the Yardbirds are doing their thing. They become Zeppelin. Beck is doing his thing, and he forms like the Jeff Beck group.
Yes.
And he really was playing with a lot of different bands at the time.
Yeah, lots of different people, and the Jeff Beck group came together, and that was some no-name artists as well, right? We've never heard of these guys, but let's talk about them. We got Rod Stewart.
We had Rod Stewart on the vocals. Never heard of him.
Never heard of that guy.
Ronnie Wood.
Yep. That guy might have rolled off the charts too.
Maybe. But it's funny because he at this point in after the Yardbirds up until like the mid '70s, it's kind of like a transitory period for him. It's like I feel like it's going back at it. It's like he's kind of trying to find himself.
Yeah.
I feel like. And because he was working with a lot of people. He also was working with Tim Bogert and Carmine Appice, the rhythm section from another band called Vanilla Fudge. They
legendary.
Yes, so he was working. He put out an album with them. He put out an album with some other people. He had the Jeff Beck group. So he was like, kind of going all over the place, just kind of like seeing what the vibe was, really, just seeing like what fit.
Yeah.
And he also had some problems during this time with health. Because he got in a car accident.
Yes, he did. And he was out for a while trying to get himself back together.
Yeah, he was basically out of the picture for like 2 years. So this is, kind of a period where he's not really... He's trying to figure it out. You know what I mean? And...
We're going to call him the nomad guitarist right now.
The nomad guitar. So he put out... his first album, I believe, with the Jeff Beck group, or maybe it was solo. I can't remember right now, but it was called Truth. Yeah. Which did really well. He put out another album called Beckola. And then, he had the car crash, so he was out for a little bit. Yeah. He eventually came back with an album that was produced by George Martin, the producer of the Beatles. Yes. It's called Blow by Blow. And this is when it's really, I feel like you can really see that he's starting to figure out what it is that he does so much better and so much differently than everybody else. Yeah. Because first of all, I hadn't heard this entire album until recently, but this shit is funky. Yeah. This shit is really funky. And it's really cool to just like hear the different ways that he's, playing guitar. And at this point, he's kind of like eschewing, is that the right word? Yeah. Using a pick. Yeah. He's not using a pick anymore. Right.
He felt like that got in the way with his like innovation and his style, because he was really good at the whammy bar, and he's just really great at making the guitar sing and sound like vocals.
Yes. Yeah. And that's another interesting thing, because he didn't do a lot of singing himself, and he didn't really have to, because the guitar did the singing for him. And he said, and you're using a pick, basically your hand is like this, so you're just using the pick. But he was like, all my other fingers, they're just not doing anything. Like,
what about us?
Yeah, he's like, I should be using my fingers. Like, I can get so many more sounds.
I think pinky works real great.
Yeah. So he starts getting into really... It's so hard to explain this to, like, people that aren't, like, guitar players necessarily. But what he was doing was super subtle. Yeah. Like, his style was not, like, the flashy, like, oh, look at me, like, I can do all this crazy shit. Like Eddie Van Halen, for example, obviously great guitar player, but he's also very flashy. And like, you don't necessarily have to know how to play guitar to see what he was doing and be like, this is crazy. Yeah. But with Beck, it was a little more subtle. Yeah. Like, again, he's making the guitar sing. So he's doing things like, he's rolling the volume knob up and down, so it kind of sounds like kind of violin-y. You know what I mean? Like volume swells. He's using the whammy bar in like a really tasteful way, because a lot of people, especially at the time when like the whammy bar is relatively new, they'd be using it for these crazy sound effects. They'd be doing like like crazy dive bombs and shit. But what he did is, instead of just like doing crazy dives, he literally would use it to hit lower notes specifically. So he would like incorporate the whammy bar into the melody. Yeah. Like, I wish I had a guitar with a whammy bar so I could kind of like demonstrate. I kind of need to get one, actually. But, so yeah, he was doing things and just like you really playing guitar in subtle ways that you're not always going to necessarily pick up on if you don't know guitar yourself. Right. And I think that's why he was more of like a guitarist. Yeah. You know what I mean? He wasn't necessarily the most popular. With the general public. Yeah.
He never got too big on us. Yeah, he never got too big.
He never got too big on us because he wasn't really focused on that. No. Like, he was focused on making his guitar playing as best as it possibly can be and as expressive as it could possibly be.
Yeah. And then going a little back to his influence, one of them was Roy Buchanan, too, who we just saw play live. And on
the internet, not in real life. Yeah.
Rest in peace to Roy Buchanan as well. A long time ago, he passed away. But yeah, we saw him on our reaction channel. We actually reacted to Roy Buchanan. We actually get to see him play. And I can see how Roy influenced Jeff, and I can also see with Jeff's like sustained notes and those kind of like vocal pitches that he's putting on the guitar. I could see how he influenced David Gilmour, like, you know what I mean? It's like crazy.
Absolutely.
But yeah, super innovative, going up and down the fretboard, like you were saying. Let's get back to that.
and he's also, that's the thing, he's not really like shredding. It's very melodic. Like we're saying, it's like he's making the guitar sing. So it's not about hitting a lot of notes super fast. It's about hitting the right notes at the right time with the right sound.
Yeah.
And that was what he was perfect at doing.
Yeah.
Right? So the
that
best
sounds like a
example-
guitar course. That sounds like how you start a guitar workshop or course. At
How to
master
hit
class.
the right notes at the right time with the right sound.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Brought to you by Jeff Beck. So another, like a perfect example of this, and this is one of his most famous songs. It was on the Blow by Blow album.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually a song that was written by Stevie Wonder.
Yes.
Because we've ended as lovers. That was originally sung by, it wasn't Stevie that sang it. It was his wife. Sarita.
Yeah, we reacted to that too.
We did. And so Jeff did a version of it where he is using his guitar as the vocal and as the main melody. And it's just so beautiful.
Yeah. It's one of those songs, like I heard it again recently, and I said to myself, if I were Jeff and I were auditioning people to come into my band, I would almost like never want them to play that. Because I can imagine... After hearing Jeff, the way he plays it, I've only heard like one other guitarist while researching it that played it like well, just like him. But I can imagine people trying to play it like Jeff and Jeff getting like yeah, because that's one of those songs that's so beautifully done that people should not really, a whole bunch of people shouldn't rush to redo it, like, you know, or use it as their audition song.
It would be very hard to pull off.
Yeah.
We'll put it like that, you know, because nobody could really play it like him.
Yeah.
You know, he really... the Stratocaster specifically, he started off playing different kinds of guitars, the Telecaster, you know, Les Paul, whatever. But when he really found the Stratocaster is when he really felt like the guitar is becoming a part of him. Because for all that don't know like the different types of guitars, the Stratocaster has a whammy bar on it.
Yeah.
As opposed to like a Les Paul or a Telecaster, there is no whammy bar. There's no thing that you can press to make the notes sound different like that. So when he discovered the Telecaster, he was like, "Oh, this is like a level. This allows me to go to a new level of melodicism, really, that I couldn't do on a different instrument."
Yeah.
So he really, like he said, the Stratocaster became like an extension of himself, and you can really feel that. Like, there's certain guitar players, people say like, "Oh, it's like the guitar was like a part of his body." With Jeff, it really was. Yeah. You know what I mean? He really put his whole soul and his whole being into his guitar playing.
Absolutely.
So Blow by Blow became his best-selling solo album.
Yeah. Yep.
So this is like probably like the peak of his commercial success, I would say, like in the 70s.
Yeah, in the 70s. In the 80s, he was doing soundtracking, which is crazy for some big movies as well. Yeah. Definitely. So yeah, definitely that was the peak of then. And then he's moving down the line. I don't think there was a decade where Jeff was not working extensively.
No, he definitely... It's interesting because he wasn't necessarily the most prolific as far as like putting out music like every year or, you know, all the time. But he was always working on certain things. His process was a little slower than some others, which I think is another reason why he might not be as like commercially known as some other like guitar players, because he really took his time to develop all these things, and he wasn't just throwing things out there all the time.
Yeah,
you know
Jeff,
what I mean?
The Sade of guitarists.
Yeah, something like that. So he was putting out these albums in the 70s that went really well, and then he put out this album Flash in the early 80s, where it was basically a pop record.
Yeah.
Where, you know, he had people coming in and singing, and it was like a different style. He said he felt a little lost during this period, and he did win his first Grammy for that album for Best Instrumental Performance, but he said, looking back at it, it wasn't really a good musical time for him, which I think is interesting.
It is pretty interesting. We couldn't see that, Jeff, so stop lying. No. Stop trying to sell records out of sympathy votes.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was like him, just like, I don't know what I'm trying to do, or if the record label's like, oh, let's make a pop record to get you more sales or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just really interesting. I think another reason why he might not be as known to the general public is because he doesn't sing.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know, it just makes me think of Santana.
I thought so too. I was going to say he pulled a Santana.
He pulled a Santana. It's like, for you to be able to be an instrumentalist you don't sing and you're the main person, that just proves how good you have to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because when people are having like features, a lot of times they'll bring in like other singers and other people to be like on their albums or whatever. But if you're just an instrumentalist, people are like, I have to have him. That's an unmistakable sound. You're doing something crazy good.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. But yeah, that Flash album had People Get Ready with Rod Stewart as well. And I remember that song constantly getting like airplay when I was really, really tiny. So that was a big one. And then I believe it was Jeff who inducted Rod into the Hall of Fame and was like, we have a love-hate relationship. he loves me and I hate him. It's actually cool to see when you look at rock and roll history how many of these artists worked with each other, are still comrades to this day. You know, that's pretty amazing, I think, as well. You know, we could learn a lot about that through with American bands. You know, it seems like the Brits seem to not really stay mad at each other for too long.
There's just not enough people over there. It's a lot smaller country, you know.
We gotta stay mad for decades over here.
I'm gonna make enemies with everybody on this side of the country. I'll just move to the West Coast. It's like no big deal. Nobody knows me over there. Yeah. So Jeff, constantly innovating. He's always getting better. And everybody was saying, you know, like looking up, he's like, he wasn't a legend that just kind of like rode off his previous success. He was always working to get better his entire life. And people were like, he got better every single year that he was alive, that he was playing. He always got better because that was it. Like since he was 8 years old, like the guitar is all that he wanted to do and working on cars.
But yeah, in the early 2000s, he kind of quote unquote made a comeback. He goes on stage with like Kelly Clarkson for something for American Idol, and that just gave him a resurge of a new generation of fans.
Right.
Because his original fans were definitely still well and vibrant, able to buy music, and still considered him the best. But it's just the 2000s generation that didn't necessarily know him that well because he wasn't, you know, popping on MTV or whatever, you know, syndicate that was on at the time. But he made a resurge, and then you have a whole new generation of Jeff Beck fans, and they were like, whoa, this guy's like the best guitarist I've ever heard. Because he does get newer and he does get fresher, and he comes with new tricks that people have not done yet.
That's true.
So everybody's got to like stop and pay attention to this guy.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. But I want to go back to what was going on after he put out that Flash album.
Okay.
So yeah, like he was saying, he wasn't super happy with it. For a lot of the 80s, he was working on soundtracks, like we were saying before.
Yeah.
He didn't really put out too much of his solo stuff until later in the decade. He put out Jeff Beck's Guitar Shop. Because this guy, let me tell you something. This guy loved two things. Cars and guitars. So what better way than to make an album? It was big. This album was a lot more like industrial, which I think is interesting. Because again, he's always expanding the sound. Like Blow by Blow, it was more like funk, like R&B style. But everything he's putting out, he's trying to get involved with different kinds of fusions, different kinds of genres, and seeing how he can fit himself in there. Yeah,
it all comes together. Cars and guitars rhyme, and then he's a musician. I mean, it's just there you go. I
also got a shout out. So the Guitar Shop album. The drummer on that album was a cute little drummer by the name of Terry Bozzio.
Yeah.
Who just, every time I hear his name, it just makes me happy. I love that guy.
Yeah.
Shout out to Terry Bozzio.
Yeah, we reacted to 1 or 2 songs from Jeff Beck's Guitar Shop. Definitely 1.
Definitely 1, maybe 2. I don't remember.
Yeah, for some reason I feel like it's 2, but definitely 1. So check that out too. Look for that, guys.
So the Guitar Shop album was like his last that he put out in the 80s, like big thing that he put out in the 80s. And in the 90s, he spent a lot of time collaborating with other people.
Yeah.
And like the list of people that he collaborated with is crazy.
It's extensive. Jeff Beck collaborated with Toots and the Maytals and ends up winning because he performed. Ends up winning with Best Reggae Album.
Yeah, so that's another genre. Another genre he's getting into. You know what I mean? He's just always doing that. He's working with Roger Waters. He's working with Kate Bush. Yeah. I believe he was actually in the 80s. He was supposed to go on tour with like Mick Jagger, but he broke his thumb working on the Cars. So he's like, sorry, Mick. I'm doing my thing.
Can't do it. Wait, that was wrong.
You want to try again?
No, it's not going to come out right.
Close enough. Better than me. So, yeah. So, I mean, he does that. Then in the late 90s, he's putting out solo albums. And basically, at this point, every album that he puts out, he's going to win the Grammy for Best Rock Instrumental. Yeah. Like, every time he puts out, the Grammys keep coming up.
Yeah, I think at this point, it's around, like, number 4.
Or something like that.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
And it just reminds me, because as a kid, I used to watch the Grammys a lot every year. And I wasn't into Jeff Beck, of course, at that time. So I can kind of flashback, see myself wanting somebody to win and be like, Jeff Beck. I don't know who that is. Like,
it is funny how, you discover things as you grow. Because, like, I always knew about Jeff Beck. I always knew that he was part of, like, the triumvirate of the British guitarists, right?
Yeah.
Clapton, Page, Beck. But like we were saying, he was never super as known to the general like commercial public.
Yeah, he wasn't in your face. There's no like Jimmy Page didn't talk a lot.
Yeah.
But you remember him because of like his outward appearance, right? He's got the suit with the dragon, like, you know what I'm saying? He's doing certain things. With Jeff, it was just like, it's like his simple style, and Jeff is pretty much the same image that he was from the beginning.
Right.
To the end of his career.
Yeah. So it's just interesting because like I'd always heard like certain bits and pieces from him, but it's really only lately that I've really started listening to more and more of him and like listening to like full albums from him. And I'm like, oh, now I totally get why everyone talks about him like this, because he was just the way that he played was just like there was just so much feel and there's so much emotion. But it's so subtle that if you don't know what he's doing, it's harder to appreciate it. Yeah. It's some, you know, flashy, you know, 20-minute solo tapping, like all these tips and tricks. Whereas like there's just something else to be said about just playing something so beautifully and just like right in the pocket.
Yeah.
Like something, again, to bring back David Gilmour, like we were talking about this pretty recently. He doesn't play anything more than what he has to do.
Yeah.
And Jeff Beck is a similar thing. Because it's like he's going to do what's right for the song.
Yeah.
And he's going to do what's right for it in that moment at that exact time. He's not going to do shit just to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I respect that a lot as a musician. And it makes sense of why he's, you know, quote, the guitarist. Yeah. You know?
I'm your favorite guitarist.
That's right.
Should have been a rapper, Jeff.
That's right. That's a bar right there. So after, you know, the 90s when he's doing all these collabs, he's still putting out his own albums. He's still winning Grammys all the time. He even put out a live DVD that went platinum, which is pretty unheard of for a DVD. Yeah. I mean, that's not even like, I didn't even know they counted. I didn't even know DVDs could go platinum, to be honest.
Me neither. I just thought it was like sales. I didn't think it was like a thing. Yeah. But yeah, he's doing great things. He's performing at the Crossroads Festival. Collabed in again. The collab. And so now he's moving into the new millennium, and he, like his counterparts or comrades, is just constantly evolving. You know, we're not just like cemented in time where I just want you to play these songs that I know about by you. Right. You know, it's not that feel when it comes to Jeff Beck. It's like, what's he gonna do next? And that separates him from his pool of mates. You know,
what's the next Beck? Right. And I
when
also
you see Clapton, it's like he better play Layla.
That's so true. That is really true. Yeah, and it's like it's funny because, you know, we were talking about, we've done a few reactions videos to him, and every time that we do a video where we're reacting to Jeff Beck, the word that comes into my mind every time is tasty. Like every time it's like, that note was just so good. Yeah, that was just the exact right thing to play. You know, and it just flows through him. And when you watch him play, you can tell. Yeah. Because it's not like he's, you know, like he's still moving. And he's still, you know, he's having fun with it. Yeah. But the way, like the accuracy that he's playing with while he's doing that is just insane. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely feel like he talks to and cares about his guitar. Like, what are we going to play today, Susie? How do you feel? You feel like hitting this note? We have a connection. Yeah, so I mean, he just continued putting out music. He continued touring, you know, up until really the pandemic. He was playing with Tall Wilkenfeld. Yes. Shout out to Tall. He was playing with was it Ainsley Dunbar?
Yes, he was.
Yeah,
yes, he was. He
great
stole
drummer.
A couple of Zappa's drummers.
That's right.
He's not using them. No, I'm just kidding.
It's a small musical world over here, guys. Once you get to that level, there's only so many people around that you can really do what you want to do. You know what I mean?
They formed a gang.
the Jeff Beck gang comes right after the Jeff Beck group. Yep. It's a different thing. But yeah, and then he even was, before he died, he was making music with like Johnny Depp. Yeah. Like he just, like everybody that wanted, that could work with him wanted to. Yeah. Basically. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And he worked with so many other female artists. He had a kind of flow or avenue where he was just playing as lead guitarist to some female singers, which we reacted to. Imogen Heap. Yeah. And guys, let us know all the other ones that we should hear or probably should react to. His like collaborations with female vocalists, because I heard that's a great avenue that he's done. And honestly, even just you saying that right now, I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense because it's the way that he plays. It is so melodic. It's almost like it's almost like singing harmonies. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean, I've heard recordings where he was featured on like it was on basically like an opera album, and like the song, like his guitar sounds like a fucking opera singer.
I heard that.
Notes.
It's so beautiful.
It's really insane, and it's one of those things. Like, I mean, I've been playing guitar for more than half of my life, and a lot of the time when I hear guitar players, I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing there, blah 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 blah. There's so many times that I've heard something that Jeff Beck did, and I'm just like, how the fuck did he do that? Like that, I can't even wrap my head around it. Like he's using harmonics with the whammy bar, he's using this, he's using that, and it's.
Yeah.
His level of feel is unmatched.
Yeah. I when I think of one word to describe him, I just think innovation. Like I see like the skies and him just soaring on a freaking guitar. Like, you know what I'm saying? Treating it like an airplane or something. Just going to heights that people just don't go to. Like.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's absolutely true. And that's why, I mean, we had to talk about him. We had to give him the respect that he deserves. Because it's like he's been an innovator for decades. Yeah. And he never stopped innovating.
No, not at all. And he told you he was the best almost 50 years ago. So he told you. If
Some
you didn't
things
listen,
never change.
Yeah, exactly. Like his hairstyle. I heard he walked into the audition for the Yardbirds like a total grease monkey. Like he was covered in oil. Like, and his hair
after
was
working
like
on the cars?
Yeah, and it's like he came right from the shop. His hair is still like super long. And they were like, could somebody go clean him up? Like they heard him play, and once they knew they wanted him, they were like, can we go clean him up? And one of the bandmates like took him to get like his hair cut, and that made the signature look for Jeff Beck.
Good for him. But yeah, I mean, just like you said, like when we're thinking about, it's like innovator is the best word, and then also he I feel like he never really gave in to the pressures of the industry. Yeah, because he would. You know what I just thought of? He's almost like the Larry David of guitar. Because he's only going to put shit out when he wants to put shit out. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, he's taken sometimes years off between albums just to like work on his cars. You know what I mean? It's like I'm following my passions. Like I'm at a point where I can put out things that I want to put out. No label is going to force me to put anything out. Yeah. I wonder if he said to himself, I'm pretty sure he said it to others because we heard he has a temper. I don't have to put up with this. I'm Jeff fucking Beck. Like, who knows? I'm sure that was an inner conversation. Who knows? But yeah, he's just the best. I mean, it's sad that he's not with us anymore. But obviously, he left us such a great, catalog to be remembered by. Yeah. And I think as long as people play the electric guitar, he will be remembered as one of the best.
For sure.
So this is our little, I guess, tribute to him. This was a good time just talking about him, and not that we're gonna help his legacy
we're not
at all, but we just wanted to do this.
I thought we were the only ones that could. It's the only reason why I did this.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, let us know if we missed anything. Let us know if there's things that we said that you agree with, that you disagree with. I mean, we want to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like we said at the beginning, this is a conversation. There's only 2 of us in the room right now, but if you're watching, you could be part of the conversation. Yeah. So talk to us.
Yeah. And we don't have to tell you guys how to talk because we're musicians and it's pretty rock and roll environment over here. So you guys always say what you want anyway. So.
Yeah. Let it loose, okay? Don't hold back. But yeah, so I don't know. Is there anything else we should say? He's just a legend. I mean, he's the best.
Rest in peace to one of the legends. It's definitely, time for a lot of the legends to go on to the next level of life, the afterlife. Yeah. But well, we had a great time talking about Jeff Beck. We know in the future we'll have a great time listening to more and more Jeff Beck because there's countless songs and albums that you can listen to. So, absolutely. Rest in peace to Jeff Beck. Shout out to all the Jeff Beck fans now and then the ones that are coming up later on.
Yeah, all the ones in the future that maybe not even born yet.
Yep.
So yeah, thanks for being here, guys. If you like the podcast, comment, leave a review. Check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/musicmaniacs to help us keep this going so we can do more episodes and stuff like that. And until then, see you next time.
See ya.